Deer Park Junior Senior High School is trying a new form of conferences this year, which we are calling our College and Career Readiness Planning Meetings. What you're about to see an example of one of these planning meetings. Now please know that all these conferences are not expected to look like that. Your conferences could be completely different in regards to whatever your students' needs are, or whatever your student is sharing. And so we hope it to be a good conversation between the parent, student, as well as the facilitator about what are your students' goals are and where they want to be, whether they're focusing on looking at colleges, careers, or the military.
This is Hodge, good to see you again. Ryan, we'll go ahead and let you start talking about your goals.
Okay. Well, Mom, as you probably know, we've been having College and Career Readiness Wednesdays in Expo. So we've been having like a longer period, and we've been working on making some goals for this year. So we've been doing these things called SMART goals, which are basically just you're really trying to get to the specifics of what your goals are about, and like they're supposed to be specific, measurable, action-bound, realistic, and time-bound, so that you don't have these vague goals that you can't reach. They're supposed to be pretty easy to figure out.
So part of the format for this new College and Career Readiness Conference is going to be to have students specifically talk about what some of their academic goals are through the next year. And through those goals, they're going to look at what some of their career assessments have been and have said they might be good at, things they might be interested in. They're also going to look at some of their previous test scores, their plan, their explore, as well as their pre-ACT scores or any ACT scores that we have, to see how those test scores, career assessments, set them up for what some of their goals are in the future, whether it be college, career, military, and then really have a conversation with parents and teachers to determine what some action steps are for attaining those goals.
So the first goal that I had was kind of a very soon-to-be executed goal that was to resign from my part-time job so that I can focus more on my academic pursuits this year, because I felt like it was really starting to kind of get in the way of me being able to complete my work, and it was sort of putting a lot of stress on me. So that one I reached the goal. I went in and I talked to my manager, and I resigned from my job and gave my 2 weeks notice. And then my other two goals were more about like my study habits and getting homework done and things like that. So my second goal was to complete my homework before school at the nighttime, so I didn't have to wake up early and be tired.
That's a good idea.
Yeah. Because that also is kind of stressful. So I said that my goal in detail would be to finish it before it's at home, so that I'm not stressed. And how to make it happen is maybe like write some to-do lists and really get things organized better, because that's probably one of the reasons that I wasn't getting it done, is just because I didn't have it organized as well. So I wasn't really as sure what exactly I had to do, and I was losing focus. Now, obviously, the obstacle that I might run into, which is also something we had to write down, was possibly procrastination, because even though I don't ever do that, I could possibly have done that then. So I said to-do lists would also help with that, and breaking up the work into smaller chunks so that it didn't seem so overwhelming would also work. And then my third goal was to study for a longer period of time without distractions. So, because I find that I would try to go study for tests or something, and then I would get sidetracked with other things that I was trying to do, or I was just not studying for very long, and the study sessions weren't useful, so I'm trying to make them more useful. So I'm trying to take at least an hour at a time and just kind of put my distractions, like just go out maybe to a different room where
I was going to suggest that, maybe getting away from your computer so that you can focus.
Just because like a lot of stuff that can just be distracting in my room, so maybe go into another room in the house and put my phone and put a computer in the other room, and then just focus on studying for a while. And I think mostly it's just kind of getting to that, the strategy is just sort of realizing that there's going to be, I can always do the other stuff after I study because I need to make sure and allot as much time to that as I do for other projects that I work on.
Well, the planning meetings are different from traditional conferences because traditionally we would budget about 10 to 15 minutes, bring the parent and the student in and say this is how they're doing right now, and hey, he or she could be doing a little bit better in regards to this. However, now we are including a little bit of that, but obviously we're looking at long-range planning. We are using data over multiple years to see, okay, are we seeing the student progress? Are they going to be fully academically ready to take college classes without remediation? And so it's not a traditional conference. We're looking at 30-minute time frame to really have a good conversation between the student, parent, and the teacher facilitator.
Your second and third goals are really closely tied together, and they're focused on developing better study habits and cultivating a better study environment. You talked a little bit about the roadblocks. How realistic do you think those second and third goals are for you, and do you have a timeline on them?
Sure. I think definitely that they're realistic, and I think that it helps sort of to come up with some solutions to possible obstacles that there are, because definitely, since if I was having trouble with them, they're clearly more difficult things for me. So the idea of like having these to-do lists where I'm writing down what exactly I need to get done, and then also possibly next to those things writing this is when I need to have it done by, and really committing myself to doing that, and maybe going into another room, eliminating the distractions from it. That's definitely how I think I would be able to efficiently reach those goals. And I think the timeline is really just right about, I mean, as soon as possible, just start doing those, really writing things down and getting more organized with studying and homework, because I think that's really going to make a big difference, just getting right into that.
Okay, so the distractions, Mom mentioned the computer. Is there anything else that you would lump into that category?
Yeah, definitely. Put my phone in another room too, and just kind of leave that over there so I don't have that, any text messages or calls, that I can just sort of leave those for later after I get my work done and my studying done.
So one concern that I would have there, and I'll let you address this in just a minute, but one primary concern that I would have is that I know you use that phone quite a bit for academic and professional purposes, scheduling, things like that. So how realistic is it for you to be able to eliminate that phone from study time if that's where you're outlining your assignments? Is there another method that you can use to outline assignments? That way you don't have that portal right in front of you as you're checking assignments by their due dates and things like that.
Definitely, I think that because you're right that using my phone for academic stuff is really a thing that I do a lot. I think that as I go through the day, I can always write it down more just on a pad of paper or in my planner, and sort of have it there as well, so that I have a copy that's not going to have other distractions coming along with it. So I can sort of leave my phone and just take maybe that pad of paper or the planner and just have those things written down. That way it's not going to distract me, and I can still have the list of things to do.
So looking at these goals, how do you think these goals are going to feed into your life beyond Deer Park High School? If we're talking about moving from senior year to college, how do you see these goals helping you in the long term?
Well, I mean, especially in college, I think the idea of being organized and getting things done so that you're not, there's always going to be some amount of stress whenever you're in any kind of education environment, I think. But the whole, on the whole, if you can sort of organize yourself better and have your assignments more readily available, you can read them and you're staying on track with completing them, it's going to make things a little bit easier once I get to college, so that I'm not doing things at the very last moment all the time. I can kind of separate things into smaller chunks and do a better job overall, since I'm not going to be cramming into one night.
And speaking of college, let's get down to some specifics here. I know you've outlined a couple of different universities that you've looked at, tuition costs, GPA requirements, test scores, and things like that. You want to start addressing some of those?
Sure. The University of South Carolina was one that I had put on the sheet, and that one, as far as how big it is, it's about 25,000 people on.
A lot larger than Deer Park.
A lot larger than Deer Park, but and their average GPA is 3.8, and their average ACT is about a 28. And the price, though there's an asterisk by this because of some other research I did, the price for out-of-state would be about $32,000. But what I've found from looking into it more is that they actually have some really great scholarships there that I intend to apply for because and you can actually get in-state tuition with some of their merit-based scholarships which would lower the price substantially because they have a really good in-state tuition.
And you've met with some representatives from South Carolina recently? Is that
Yeah, that
accurate?
was we went to a meeting about it, and then a second college was Ohio State. I was looking at so that's they're bigger. They're 43,000 people. Their average GPA is 3.71, and their average ACT score is a 26 to a 30, and the price is $20,800. It's in state. And for both of those, I mean, for all these colleges, my major that I'm interested in is computer science. So that's what I'm planning to go for.
One of the things that I'm seeing working with the sophomore, juniors, and seniors is just really how nervous and anxiety-provoking the whole college application process is to students, and so they tend to wait until the very last second to fill out the application because the whole application itself is just beyond overwhelming to them. So I think the earlier we start having these conversations, you start chipping away at what college planning really means, and it doesn't end up being this big project that is done in November 1st. It's something that they're planning for from 7 all the way up through 12.
Well, Mrs. Daly, thanks for coming in tonight. Daniel, thank you to you too. So Daniel, why don't you go ahead and take the lead here and talk to Mom as well as me about what we've been doing on Wednesdays in order to prepare for tonight's meeting.
All right. So on Wednesdays, I've been coming up with goals that I want to achieve by like the time I hit college,
Okay.
and I came up with 2 of them. The first one is to get into a good college, hopefully to play Division III soccer once I make it, and then the other one is to like work harder in class and start studying more. And like the main thing is Spanish because I'm having a hard time
Yeah, you are.
with that, not studying.
That's something new for you, though.
Yeah.
Now, Daniel, do you have your SMART goals in there that you created in class? You have them right there.
Yep.
Okay. Now, one of the aspects of the SMART goals is making sure that they're realistic. Both those goals. Do you think they're realistic as well as attainable? And can you tell me a little bit about that?
I think they are. In Spanish, I got a B this quarter, but
Okay.
that took a lot of work. So hopefully I can get it up to an A and work harder. And then the one to get into a good college, I think is okay because of grades. And I do a lot of stuff in the community. And I'm halfway okay at soccer. So if I work hard, I could probably get there.
Okay. So one of the things that, as time goes on, you'll continue to revisit, your goals, but that, we got a short-term goal, as well as a long-term goal. So specifically dealing with the short-term goal for right now, the Spanish one, do you need any assistance in order to achieve that goal right now?
Yeah, it would be helpful if I talked to her more after class and just got extra help.
It's really important to start the planning process early. And so we feel like, as early as 7th and 8th grade, we want our students to be focusing on the academic rigor and, the future course planning that they need to have in order to be fully ready for their college and, or career or military plans after high school. And if we start the process early, then parents are fully involved. They can choose their course selections wisely, whether it's traditional track or looking at the more advanced and AP level classes, as well as looking at dual enrollment and other opportunities like that.
I think part of it is just taking a language for the first time as an 8th grader and trying to figure out how to study and what exactly she's looking for. And we've kind of talked about that at home a little bit.
Well, it's a good challenge for an 8th grader to take.
Yeah.
There's lots of benefits of taking that foreign language in 8th grade versus waiting to take it in 9th or 10th grade. you know. Obviously, when you get to 11th and 12th grade, you get the option of taking that Honors Spanish 4, Honors Spanish 5 class, and that has a lot of good benefits. And we can talk further about that.
I'd like to make it there eventually.
Okay, all right. Well, and they also did the foreign language department. They also scheduled those extended field trips. So
Yeah, he's already had interest in the one this summer. I said, nope, too soon.
too soon.
Too soon.
Yeah. Okay. So Daniel, what was the next thing that we covered in our CCR?
Colleges that would fit our goals and that like would fit into career opportunities that I'd want to do.
Okay.
The first one was Trine University. It's a really good school from what I know. You have to have an average ACT score of a 26 and a GPA of a 3.74, so I'll have to work hard to get there. And their biggest thing is engineering, which is something I have interest in doing. And the other one is Xavier, which you have to have an ACT score of 26, and then you have to have an average GPA of 3.57.
Okay.
And then it has engineering, business, which I would both like to do.
Having researched and looked up some of those informations, was there anything surprising about any of those colleges or universities?
The cost.
Okay. Now, did you say he knows somebody that goes to Trine?
Well, my nephew Ryan is a senior this year, and
Okay.
that's where he's gonna go to school next year. And I
Okay.
have a niece and a nephew both at Xavier on
Okay.
academic scholarships, so
All
little familiar with those schools.
Okay. All right. So the cost, Daniel, what was because Trine and Xavier are both private colleges. Ohio State is not. What is the cost difference approximately? What is Ohio State looking at?
It's like $11,000 plus, which is like close to $30,000 cheaper than Trine or Xavier.
Okay. All right.
It's a lot of money.
So has there been any discussion of financial planning regarding college?
Hopefully scholarships, and I've started refereeing soccer, and I want to get a job when I'm 16, just part-time,
Okay.
doing something to make some extra money.
Yeah,
That's
you
good.
helped Mr. Heyman this year too with
Yep.
volleyball, keeping the score clock.
Yeah.
So little jobs here and there.
Well, that's good. I mean, gotta sock that money away for it. I mean, it helps pay for books. Every little bit helps.
We've got a college fund we set up too when you were little. Not much there, but there is some set aside, so.
Yep.
Okay. Well, and yeah, the cost can seem like it's daunting, but if you got an academically motivated student, some of those costs can be decreased, like through merit scholarships, to the point where sometimes it gets down to the point where the private small college is about the same as an in-state tuition for a regular college. So it's something to keep in mind.
Keep the grades.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And keep practicing soccer. It's something to think about. So any red flags at this point in regards to any of those that seem unattainable?
No, not really. If I work hard enough, I think the cost I can get down enough where I can get them.
All right. Well, good.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
It's kind of scary to think about college at your age, isn't it?
Yeah.
well, and I could see that for an 8th grade, and that's why we're having these
Yeah.
discussions early on, because when you think about the investment that someone who's going to Trine or Xavier, that's a huge investment, and it's better to start the planning process early.
Mm-hmm.
It is.
Okay, so Daniel, after that, I think we actually started to talk about careers, correct? Oh, okay, good.
Yep.
You got your Explore results there.
Yep. And it shows that I should be looking into like management and sales, or regulation and protection, which would be like a police officer, a detective, like somebody working in sales, or
Okay.
a manager of store or something like
You have the
that.
gift of gab like your dad.
Yeah. Okay. So Mom, this gray area kind of shows where his interests were. So when he took the ACT Explore test, these were things that I asked him a series of questions that indicated that these might be the areas where he's showing a high interest. But what was the area that you said yourself that you were interested in?
Engineering, it's the
Yeah.
complete opposite of where it's showing what I should be looking into.
Yeah. So if we just follow the circle
Wow.
straight across, we have engineering. So did that surprise you, Daniel?
Yeah, a lot.
Tell me about that.
I don't know, just my what's the word, interests aren't really into like science and stuff right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I like talking, and I'm doing better in English than anything else.
Yeah,
And that's
okay.
where my strengths are, so that probably makes sense, working with people.
But Mom, you said that aspect wasn't surprising to you?
Mm-mm. No, he has the gift of gab. That part of it is not surprising. And actually, one of the things, I mean, he had talked about detective when he was younger. He talked
Mhm.
about police officer when he was younger. But the other thing that he's talked a lot about is wanting to get into like sports management or becoming an agent or becoming an analyst, because he's good at talking to people, but he picks up, even when he was little, people would be talking about player stats and different things like that.
Mhm.
He would remember those things and then be able to have pretty good conversations with adults about different teams and different players and, you know, what their stats were, and people have always been kind of amazed. So being into the kind of the speaking field does
Well-
not really surprise me.
Well,
but
it's
that's what it
interest-
shows.
Yeah, and it's interesting that this area is right in between the idea of working with data and the idea of working with people, and
Mhm.
he's clearly there. And you know, and something to think about is that a lot of fields out there are not just, you know, in one area
right.
alone. Yeah, you know, for example, you know, when if you're bent on engineering, whether it's civil engineering or chemical, electrical, you know, or computer engineering, you know, a lot of those jobs aren't done in isolation.
Right.
You know,
Mhm.
I mean, I bet you could tell us probably some ways that you'd be working with a group of people and things like that.
Is there anything that has surprised you about the process thus far? Any information about the colleges or the application process or the acceptance process that maybe caught you off guard or that you weren't expecting?
Well, I think that the like one thing that like caught me off guard is what I guess I just wasn't expecting when I first began like looking at colleges, and it just their websites are just really useful. They have a lot of information that I didn't think that they would have. Like they're a really wide array of information. Like any question you really could think of asking, a lot of it's listed on the website right there. And even if you don't, if it's not, you can. There's usually a every day they've got like live chat online. You can ask a question, or I've called a few times to admissions offices, and they've been really friendly and answered my questions.
Now, that common application that you were working on, do all of the schools take a?
Not all of the schools, but there's a list. There's probably there's a growing amount of a list of colleges that do. For instance, Ohio State does take it, but University of South Carolina doesn't take that the common application. But more colleges seem to be taking it every year because it's one where you fill out the questions and then you can submit those answers to every college. So you don't have to write them over and over again.
I'm gonna put you on the spot here because I believe you had a recent acceptance letter. Is that accurate?
Yeah.
One of the three schools that you didn't just discuss.
Yeah, I also applied to IU Indiana University, and it was surprisingly fast. I got after I submitted the application, and I got an email the other day that was an acceptance email, and they said that they were sending out more information in the mail. So that's definitely one that was exciting, and I'm excited to get more information about it.
Financially, you alluded to it briefly with South Carolina. You said that, you know, you found some merit scholarships and things like that. Have you had any discussion with anybody at home about the financial aid process or you know, paying for school when you got there?
Yeah, I think we've discussed some about the whole process and sort of that like prices and the cost of the college. I think is definitely an important factor. It can't. I mean, it is. There's plenty of colleges and you have to really take into account like you don't want to have to be you don't want to take on too much of a financial burden where you're going to be paying for your entire life trying to pay back this tuition cost or the loans that you take out when there might be a college that's of similar like it just as good for your major that is for less. So you really need so it's really about finding colleges that are they're good for your major, but also that you can get enough scholarships or to bring the price down to a reasonable level.
We do have to look at this, and when the letters come back and the numbers are there after we do the FAFSA form, I think then we'll be able to talk about it again. We might consider another Ohio school as an option, as a possible backup, and we can talk about that.
I mean, some of the students I've spoken with really feel as though this is a good opportunity for them to have that experience, and I think the earlier we start having that conversation, the better it prepares them. You know, seniors now, they're really in a position where they should be having applied for college, know their list, those things like that, and they're feeling really stressed and overwhelmed right now because that conversation hasn't been happening at an early age. It's happening for the first time maybe this summer, or you know, a few weeks ago in certain cases. So I think the earlier we have that conversation, the better off we are.
Career interests. How do you see yourself, and I know we're talking 4+ years down the line, but how do you see your programs springboarding you into that field?
Well, just in general, I think computer science is a really big, it's really big and growing field in an industry. So, and what another thing that, just to tie along with the colleges that I'm picking, I think they're also ones that really allow you to get co-ops and internships while you're in school. And I think that's a really big deal when you're talking about like the technology industry, because I feel like the colleges that I pick, no matter which one I pick, they've all got programs to get you into a company and start working and learning about the industry. And then after college, you have those connections that you made during school that you can use to add on your your applications to apply for jobs and things like that. So, and I think that's definitely important. I'd like some security in wherever I end up working, because I know there are, in smaller companies like startup development companies or software companies, there's a little less security there because you don't know how the product maybe that you're working on is going to turn out, and that can be a little bit more nerve-wracking when you're talking about like your job security. So I think it's probably better if you're trying to kind of find a job to stay for a while. It might be better to work at a company that's a little bit bigger than that has a little more, maybe a little more, they can take, the stability, like they can take, if something doesn't go well, it's not going to be the end of the world. There's still resources to kind of build back up.
And I would think tied into part of that would mean that you would have some freedom as a professional. That security would actually provide you some freedom because that company can handle a setback.
Right.
Something doesn't go well. So when you're looking at working in computer science, talking about freedom, creativity, do those factor in for you?
Yeah, definitely. I think that one of the reasons that I think computer science is so intriguing is just because it's everywhere, really. Because of the kind of the technological world that we live in now, you have any kind of industry that you could think of really has some kind of aspect that needs computers, that needs people to manage those systems. And so I think it's interesting that you can find any kind of passion that you have and like associate that with computers.
How do you think those match up with what your career assessments indicated were your priorities?
Well, the Explore test, which was back a while ago that I took, that said that my career preference would be like working with people. It had a few categories that was what I fell into then. And my preference, but I think what I thought I wanted to be back then was like a teacher, an education person. So it said that I wanted to work with people. So that kind of fell pretty well into that. That actually worked out well because education is in that category of working with people. But the plan test, which was after that, obviously, that sort of shifted over a little bit and said that I would be better at working with people and ideas. And it was in between the two categories, people and ideas. And I think, even though that might not really seem like computer science, I've kind of thought about it a little bit, and I think that it does kind of match up because I think to be successful when you're talking about development and software development it's all about it's about like planning things out and working with a team and communicating well and communicating with your clients if you're building something for someone. And I think that's working with people. I mean, it's business management is important too. So working with that's working with people right there. And then also ideas is big because you have to work with the concepts and you're you're abstracting ideas and trying to sort of really get concepts nailed down or come up with new concepts. So that's ideas.
Solve a problem for
Yeah.
one of these companies, and that's why they would hire you.
So ideas falls into that pretty well. So I think working with people on ideas, that's even though maybe they don't list technology under that specifically, I think those two categories fall into computer science pretty well.
I think we can have the opportunity to talk about, different career pathways or military options. It's important, especially for those students who are thinking about career options, for them to be exploring most careers nowadays. You have to have some sort of training or education in order to be able to advance in that particular career. It's not just a high school diploma that you need. So what kind of training opportunities might be able to get me to the next step of my career, or get me a better opportunity of attaining employment, or the reality is that my projected salary might not increase. And so I think for that particular case, these conferences are even more important. So that way students understand what the value of further training is, even if it might not be a four-year college.